Rachel Mitchell was 22 years old and completely homeless, living in her beat-up car that barely ran, struggling to survive day by day in the harsh world of rural Texas. Her parents had kicked her out when she was 18 years old because she was different from what they expected and wanted. She didn't fit into their narrow, rigid vision of who she should be as a daughter. She had dreams that didn't align with their traditions and their expectations. She had a spirit that refused to be broken or confined by their rules and judgments. They gave her an ultimatum when she came out as LGBTQ, conform or leave. Rachel chose to leave, choosing her authenticity over their approval, choosing herself over their conditional love that came with strings attached and impossible conditions. For the last 4 years, Rachel had been living on the streets and in her car in rural Texas, sleeping in parking lots, in homeless shelters, under bridges during the brutal Texas summer heat that reached over 100 degrees and freezing winter nights when temperatures dropped below freezing. She worked multiple jobs simultaneously, cleaning houses for wealthy families, working at diners and restaurants, doing yard work and landscaping, anything to survive and keep her car running. She saved every penny, every single dollar she could spare from her meager wages, denying herself basic comforts and necessities. She dreamed constantly of having a place of her own, a sanctuary where she could be exactly who she was without judgment or shame or fear. She dreamed of being accepted and loved for being different. Then she found the listing for an abandoned schoolhouse in rural Texas for $7 at a county property auction. The schoolhouse had been built in the early 1900s, a one-room schoolhouse that had served the rural farming community for over 100 years before being abandoned when the community consolidated schools. The building was made of wood and stone, weathered and aged by decades of Texas heat, thunderstorms, and harsh weather conditions. It sat alone on a stretch of land, surrounded by empty agricultural fields and scattered live oak trees. The county wanted it gone from their records. They were willing to sell it to anyone for $7 just to remove it from their responsibility and liability. Rachel had been saving money meticulously for many months, working extra shifts whenever possible, denying herself basic comforts, living on the bare minimum to accumulate her savings. She had exactly $7.50 to her name after years of hard work and sacrifice. She used $7 to buy the schoolhouse at the county auction held at the courthouse. A kind and helpful clerk assisted her with the paperwork and legal documentation. 2 weeks later, she received the official deed in the mail. The forgotten schoolhouse in rural Texas was now officially hers. Before we continue, if stories like this mean something to you, hit subscribe. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. When Rachel first walked through the wooden door of the schoolhouse, stepping into the darkness and thick dust of decades of complete abandonment, she felt like she was stepping into a sanctuary that had been waiting for her. The main room was large and open, with rows of old wooden student desks still standing in lines, covered heavily in dust and decay and the passage of time. The large chalkboard was still mounted on the front wall, with faded chalk still visible on its surface from lessons taught decades ago. The teacher's desk sat at the front of the room, undisturbed. Everything was preserved in time, frozen, as if the students and teacher had simply walked out one day and never returned. Rachel spent the entire first week exploring every corner of the schoolhouse carefully and methodically. She found the storage room filled with old textbooks and teaching materials from different decades. She found the bell tower that had called students to class for generations of children. She found a small back room that had served as the teacher's private quarters. She found old class photographs on the walls showing classes from different decades spanning nearly a century. Everything was covered thickly in dust and cobwebs and age, but the structural foundation was sound and solid. The wooden beams were strong. The stone walls were stable. It was in the storage room, hidden carefully in an old metal safe behind a loose brick in the wall that she almost overlooked, that Rachel found it. A safe. An old metal safe, weathered and aged by time but still secure and functional. Rachel worked for many hours to get it open, using various tools she found scattered throughout the schoolhouse and employing careful persistence and determination. Finally, with a heavy metallic click that echoed through the room, the safe opened to reveal its secrets. Inside were metal boxes and containers. Multiple metal boxes filled with coins and old currency from different eras and countries. Rare coins from the 1800s and early 1900s. Gold coins in pristine condition. Silver coins showing intricate designs. Proof coins that were specially minted for collectors. Morgan dollars and peace dollars. Each coin was preserved carefully, stored in protective sleeves and holders to prevent damage. There were also bills and paper currency. Old currency from different decades and eras, carefully organized and preserved in protective sleeves. Some bills were worth significantly more than their face value to serious numismatic collectors. Rachel counted everything carefully and meticulously, documenting each piece. The total value was approximately $35,000. $35,000 in rare coins and vintage currency and numismatic treasures hidden in a safe in a forgotten schoolhouse in rural Texas waiting for decades. Rachel sat on the dusty floor and wept intensely, releasing years of pain and loneliness and rejection. She thought about her parents, about being told she wasn't good enough, about being cast out for being different and authentic. She thought about sleeping in her car in the cold. She thought about going hungry. And now she had found something precious and valuable that had been waiting for her all along. She researched the schoolhouse's history carefully and discovered that the teacher, a man named Edward Harrison, had taught there for 45 years from 1920 to 1965. He had been a passionate coin collector and numismatist, carefully acquiring and preserving rare coins and currency throughout his lifetime of dedication. When he retired in 1965, he had sealed his collection in the safe, apparently planning to return later but never doing so. He had passed away decades later, and his collection had remained hidden and undisturbed, waiting for someone to discover it and appreciate it. Rachel used some of the money to restore the schoolhouse carefully and respectfully. She repaired the roof and the walls. She cleaned the interior thoroughly and carefully. She restored the original wooden desks and furniture to their former condition. She preserved the historical elements and the soul of the building while making the space livable and functional for her. She created a warm home within the schoolhouse walls that had sheltered children for generations. She used other funds to enroll in college at a nearby university, studying history and numismatology intensely, becoming passionate about preserving historical artifacts and educating people about currency history and numismatic collecting. She became deeply fascinated by Edward Harrison's life, his dedication, and his passion for preserving coins and historical currency. She read everything she could find about him and the era when he taught. Rachel established a small museum within the restored schoolhouse, displaying Edward Harrison's coin and currency collection thoughtfully and educating visitors about its historical significance. She displayed the original photographs and old teaching materials. She created an educational space where people could learn about history, numismatics, and the importance of preservation. The museum became a destination for serious coin collectors, history enthusiasts, and curious visitors from surrounding areas. Today, Rachel is 26 years old. She lives in the restored schoolhouse in rural Texas, the building where she found her purpose and her true home and her identity. She runs the museum and tells the stories of the past and of Edward Harrison's legacy. She has reconnected with distant relatives of Edward Harrison and learned more about his life, his passion, and his legacy. Rachel Mitchell was 22 years old and homeless when she bought a forgotten schoolhouse for $7. It was the best $7 she ever spent, because what she found there was not just coins and currency worth money. She found a purpose. She found proof that being different was actually a strength. She found her calling to preserve and share history with the world and to create a sanctuary for others who felt rejected. If you believe that being different is a gift, subscribe to this channel.